Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the ideological civil war that's actually been raging for over 20 years now. Given that it's sort of happened, given that there's not the dead bodies and the dramatic sort of thing, and given that the media's been pretty much keeping it from us, what's happened is there were the globalists who have been in business for probably 40 years have gradually moved along to. There are three things in the West. They wanted to control the richest countries. There's no big deal controlling the poorest countries. What have they got other than a surplus population of flunky coolies? So the globalists want to control the richest countries, and they targeted three things for gaining complete ascendancy in the rich countries. The three things were getting in the way. The obstacles to their control were family, and merit being sort of key issues, and also social cohesion, social trust. They had to remove, eradicate, crush those three things, and once those three things, so they presumed, or opined, once those three things were suitably brought under globalist control, that is, social trust was gone, the family was effectively crushed, and merit was removed, then they would be in control, where they could just impose terms, conditions, and situations that they arbitrarily saw fit. Now, we can go with subsets of that to say, infiltrating and destroying the political machinery and the public service, academia, the law, and so on. But they're subsets of those three big headlines. If you don't believe in the law and courts and justice anymore, then you've played a huge role in not only removing merit from everything, but also breaking down social trust and social cohesion. If you don't believe in your institutions, then you've lost social trust. A huge amount of social trust is the trust you have not only your fellow citizens and your neighbours, but the social trust in the institutions, and that's coming under attack in two directions. The institutions no longer represent the indigenous people in the West, and social trust is being eradicated by mass migration, and particularly the sort of people that are being mass migrated to the West. Given that once upon a time, Western citizens would all be migrating to each other's countries. Typically, you'd have some exceptions, but basically that's how it worked. So, the migrants certainly that I remember as a kid, and they were around, were from Britain or France, Germany, Sweden, and so on. But today, of course, that's quite different. So these are the things they had to break down. Now, a stark reminder or bringing home the point was a company that I used to do business with pretty much on a daily basis years ago, and where they're all straight white males, well educated, had all got their jobs based on merit, and were experts or at least produced performance and achievements and accomplishments within their field. Those were the people who knew what they were doing. They had again, they were meritoriously there in those jobs. So they then came. So then I went there just recently, and there was barely a white face left. The affirmative action was running absolutely rampant. Nobody seemed to have their job on any form of merit. People were being appointed purely on the basis that they were, the proverbial black lesbian. And this would have been probably 30 years since I was there. And wow, what a difference. I remember given I was dealing with them frequently, I remember quite fondly. And I always admire people that are good at what they do, and I admire the time and effort they've put into becoming professional and competent or expert in their field. That's part of, I guess, the merit thinking that I have as I look out on the world. But gee, that's long gone. It's certainly not evident at this place. Fuck. So there's no one there who knows what they're doing. Most of the people don't give a shit either. English is almost a second language at the place now, and people just break out into conversations in their native languages. They don't talk English, so you got the Indian cabal there and the Chinese cabal over there. So it's a pretty sad experience. Now, I don't care that there are people there who are brown and black. I don't give a shit. Or I don't care that it's gone from no women working there to probably slightly over half women. I don't really care about that either. But what I do care about is that no one there knows what they're doing. They're not being appointed because they're capable. They're not being appointed on any form of merit. Everything is race, gender, quotas, and affirmative action. Now, that's a great way to break down trust and merit obviously is being broken down by this, but it's also a great way to spread social distrust. Now, the people coming from these third world countries, they're not sufficiently sophisticated and they've never encountered merit because they come from societies where it doesn't exist. They've never really encountered merit. They've come from basket case corrupt societies. So they arrive thinking that they're entitled to this. They are always entitled to this. They arrive with that childlike mentality. As I've been discovered, I'm now a superstar in Hollywood. That starry-eyed sort of ridiculous mentality, and so they think they've come because they're better than the locals, and so they've got that snotty tooty chip on shoulder type attitude as well. So I was aghast at the change that had occurred and how it was all downhill. So high-performing, good quality, meritorious straight white males are being replaced with low IQ, zero achievement accomplishment, black and brown peasants, and so this is hardly a social step forward. So where did this begin? I mean, as I've mentioned this before, and I've thought about it a lot because of the amount of international travel I did. I started to see these things, and when I thought that this is a fucking conspiracy by big finance to change how the world is structured just to suit themselves, to create monopolies and zero risk sort of environments for themselves. And when I first sort of started to look at it, I realized this, or I thought I did. I told myself, no, you're imagining this. It can't be this bad. The politicians in the countries, they wouldn't let this happen. The public servants would stop it. The courts would stop it. The think tanks would stop it. There's a whole, the media would expose it, and it couldn't happen. But if you go in and you take over the media, as indeed has happened, and turned it into a little, a globalist mouthpiece. If you penetrate the body politic and the public service, and you penetrate your now, what intrigues me is how did it happen, and how, because there has to be a starting point. How did they manage to do it? How do you go from a university that maybe is 60% conservative thinking to being 5% conservative thinking? How do you do that in 25 years? Somewhere there's a highly organized, disciplined, very focused, very committed effort to say, we're going to do this, and stick, unswervingly and with laser-like focus on achieving it. Because if it's ad hoc and there's a bit of merit here and a bit of accidental there and a bit of overflow somewhere else, you wouldn't get this outcome. You just couldn't get this degree of uniformity and control and success and infiltration. So it has to be quite planned and very centrally planned, and coordinated. And this is the bit. How did they get that level of it without somebody noticing? And I'll go to sort of when I was CEO at this business, or regional CEO, Asia Pacific CEO, I guess, and I didn't realize we had a temporary receptionist. That somebody was on holiday or off or whatever. So we had a temp receptionist. Now, when they're temps, all you care about is, well, have you done this before? Okay, all right, that's it. And you're not really, it's not important enough to put a lot of time and effort into for on any level. And it's only a lowly job. And it was only for a few weeks, but I noticed that I was getting calls being put through from these NGO groups or public service bodies. So I'm from the such and such, and we're just getting around talking to CEOs about the hiring of black lesbians to make sure that you're the human rights and equality and you're not a Nazi, are you, Billy Bob? And these calls are getting put through. Now, bear in mind, I was traveling in and out and in meetings and this sort of thing. So somehow this receptionist was working out when I was available and when I was sitting in the office, sort of, without, not in a meeting, or I wasn't out or traveling or doing something or not on the phone. So, and these weren't many times during the day, and they were for brief periods. There'd be like a 10-minute, 20-minute window, and somehow these people, to talk about the hiring of black lesbians, were calling precisely when I had nor was she trying to vet it. So she was like putting it straight. Oh, somebody here wanted to talk to you about something important. So, oh, okay, and I would assume it's like a customer or a client or a supplier or something, and so I would take the call. Well, who are you? What you're calling about? And they would launch into a very prepared speech, and they would try and shame and humble me and this sort of thing. And you've got to hire black lesbians. How many black lesbians do you have working there? And how many women? Well, why have women not 50% and so on? So these activists were, and this is my first direct exposure to this type of activism, and they were being taxpayer funded, and they'd be from some sort of obscure media outlet. I'm just calling because we're doing a story on it. Can you say that 50% of your executive management are black lesbians? These sorts of things. And it turns out this receptionist was a radical activist. She was a sort of people. And there was an army of these people around, still is, and they insert these people at various levels. So she was, I assume she was collecting double salary, what we're paying, what we were paying her at the time, the company was paying her, and she was collecting money on the side. But she was a committed activist, very quiet, not to say much and not to demonstrate the activist credentials. I remember, well, we were interviewing for an engineering manager or something like that at the time, and she was going through the applications, and then I asked her, why are you doing this? Oh, I don't know, I just wanted to make sure that they were all in order before I put them through to you. Well, it's not your job to be looking through them anyway, I'm thinking, and I told her that. Oh, I just wanted to, and then there's a bit of silence, and she said, oh, there's no women in the why do you think that is? And she posed it to me a question like she was about to give me a moral lecture of some sort, that magically women had to apply for an engineering job because engineering is typically male. So we just do the complete reverse of how it's always been, and say that, well, if it's always been a white male in the engineering manager, then we have to have a black female to do the exact opposite of whatever was going for, because whatever was happening before was made up by Hitler. No, she didn't say that, but this was my some of my earlier exposure to it. But it gave me an insight into how the radical activists insert people, but just how organised they were. Now was the temporary recruitment agency that was providing the temp receptionist, with they in on it? If so, to what extent, I don't know. I suspect they were. Why did they put her forward for this? Why did they put her? They only put one person forward and said, we haven't got any more at the moment. You can have some, if you can look at more resumes if you want to wait. And we needed to act straight away, which they knew. And so I think that was they were inserting someone, because we were a wall-to-wall straight white male, the business. Everybody there was hired on merit, by the way. Or one of the accounts clerks was a woman, and one of the junior marketing people was a woman. So anyway, this idea shows. So she was waiting. This receptionist was waiting until I was, my time was uncommitted. I'm sitting there, no meetings, no taking any phone. Then she calls the activist group or the public, her contact, and says, okay, he's available now. He's got no, okay, I'll put you through. So we went to look at the phone records of the calls coming in and out, and this receptionist was calling these activists and then putting the phone call through to me in order to try and coerce and browbeat me into hiring black lesbians. So that was one of the methods they used. Now, I stuck to the merit thing, and I rather objected to this, and especially when I worked out what she was doing. I'm thinking, how come these calls always come through to me when I'm not doing anything? How come these people don't leave messages? Because the greater balance of probability is they would call when I was out, or call when I was in the middle of something, and then they leave a message. But somehow they were always getting through at those small windows during the day when I wasn't talking to anybody or doing anything. So this alerted me to, after a number of these things, and also other things came along, like the receptionist would say, "Oh, look, there's somebody here. They mentioned your name. It's about a job or something. I don't know. Do you want to talk to them?" So I'd think, I don't know. I wonder who it could be. And so I'd come out to see them and find it's a recent migrant with very poor English and no relevant qualifications, and who wants a job, and will I talk to them? And I took a broad view. Okay, well, they've made an effort to come and knock on the door, and I was a little bit miffed with the receptionist for not having done a better job of asking the question. But nonetheless, why didn't she give this woman to the human resource manager, who was a man? Instead, she went straight for me each time. So she's under instructions: target the CEO, get him on, shame him, blame him, change his thinking. If we can change his thinking, then he'll give instructions to the others, and so on. So I remember this. I agreed to this. I think she was Chinese lady that spoke, really bad. I spoke passable Mandarin, so I could sort of make up for the difference there. So but she couldn't speak English, and so she was begging for a job and trying to suggest that by not hiring, there was something too organised about her script. That if I didn't hire her, then somehow I was a racist, or somehow I hated people from China or something like that. And so there was this sort of patter that was, again, just too well scripted. So I realised, anyway, I'm just coming to the point on this, I realised that there are a number of activists inserted at all levels that appear to be just run-of-the-mill general population. They're actually part of an organised, scripted, paid, if you like, activist hit squad that are coming at you from all levels. So they were sending these people to me as part of the overall soften him up and bring him on side. They must have thought I was a potential candidate, being worldly wise and well-travelled. Maybe they thought I was a potential candidate to shake loose. I don't know why. The company wasn't huge. I was reasonably well known in that section of the industry, so maybe I was a face that they wanted to, we want to get him on side in some way. But yeah, I was sitting talking to a CEO sort of recently, just to give you an idea of the success of this, and they've got a role there. They're sort of like a VP type role they're trying to fill, and he's complaining. The CEO, who's straight and white, by the way, is complaining to me that that only straight white males were applying, and he did interview a couple of them who were very good and high quality, but he doesn't care. He's not going to hire a straight white male. This job's got to go to the proverbial black lesbian, and they're just going to keep on going until they find someone who's even minimally plausible to put in the role. So affirmative action quota high. But he went on to mention that the BlackRock type organisation that's very much the biggest shareholder in the company, they're kind of leaning on him to do this, and they're constantly pestering him about how many black lesbians he's got on. Has he got black lesbians in wheelchairs? Just the hypocrisy of this fucking guy. Again, because he's straight white male, it irritated me listening to him. I didn't say anything. He's a customer, so I can't piss him off. But he was talking about how he gets older straight white males, guys in their 60s, say retirement age, past retirement age, and but he's not going to hire any of them. They won't be up to it. They're too old. They're past the geriatrics. They got health issues. Why would you hire someone who's old? And he seemed to have this image. They're all walking around drooling, from strokes and using walking frames or something. I don't know. Those people do exist, but I'm not too many years away from that, and I do triathlons and all sorts of shit. So I kind of didn't really sympathise. Does he realise he's talking to someone sort of? I'm now in my 60s. He's talking to someone in their 60s as he's boohooing into his coffee cup about these older straight white males. So anyway, he then talks about the affirmative action program they've got, where they're going to hire, black women in wheelchairs. So you have to have three. You have to be a minority racial, you have to be minority gender, female, and you have to have a handicap in a wheelchair. So they're going to hire, black lesbians in wheelchairs. In wheelchairs. They're so handicapped they're in fucking wheelchairs. But he's telling me that straight white males at the age of 65 are past it, and they're too sick, they're ill, they can't do any work, they're physically handicapped and so on. I think you fucking moron. But I just want to sort of touch on how were they so successful in this ideological civil war in inserting people into getting people to agree to the affirmative action, the race gender quotas, the whole wokerati, LGBTQ, and all of that sort of stuff. I refused to ever go for it. I just wouldn't do it. And once I sussed what this activist receptionist was doing, then I was very careful about who we hired, and made sure that the right questions were asked and so on. And even then I saw the relationship between things like gender studies and various sociology courses. So, you could talk to, and they thought it a bit odd, why was the CEO worried about interviewing a receptionist? Well, I wasn't. Normally I wouldn't be, but I wasn't going to allow the company or the business to be targeted by activist groups to insert their activist shit stirrers into the company. And that was and again, the way that receptionist worked, she was almost a fucking spy, like an undercover agent, a political agitator was really what she was, masquerading as a receptionist when she wasn't really that at all. So I learned the questions to ask back then. Why didn't others do it? So I would oh, okay, thanks, Billie Jean. I thank you for coming in. I'm always polite to applicants, by the way. They've given their time. They're there for free. They're not being paid to be there. I'm being paid to be there, but they're not. So I don't want to. And if they've taken public transport, like a bus or a train or something, I'll say, well, how much was your fare? $5. Well, let's reimburse you for that, and because I want to thank you for coming, and I don't want you to be out of pocket and so on. So I do that, and I thought that was the least any employer really can do, is just to thank someone for giving us their time. Anyway, so they get there, and so I'd ask, okay, what did you study? Oh, gender studies. Oh, that's interesting. And gender study. Yeah, okay, all right then. Who was it, Professor such and such, or and you could look up, Professor such and such was a radical lesbian firebrand who was talking about eradicating white society and capitalism, and so okay, oh wow, that's interesting. Well, look, thank you for coming, Billie Jean. I really appreciate that. Now you'd make a couple of phone calls, and you find that a lot of the sort of the companies that she worked for either didn't exist, didn't have the job, but also why did the recruitment agency, because temps you can only really get them through recruitment agencies, why were they covering for her, and why are they allowing a blatantly false and fake CV to go on? Because when you check on it, you find that actually she was a political activist for Greenpeace or Amnesty International or some of these radical activist groups. that even then were moving from doing good charity work, which some of them had done, moving into becoming radical activists, because she'd actually worked for them. So you could piece these things together and say, no, look, we're not. They're trying to insert an activist in the. So I was very mindful of that. But if you look at it in the wider scheme of things, how these activists were being inserted under a very planned, scripted. We've got to assume that the architecture for subverting the Western world away from merit, destroying the family, was a very planned and scripted, organized act of subversion at all levels. I think we really need to come to that realization and go back over it. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.